Greetings and welcome. Hi, I'm back again. I thought I'd come back on this time. This is my second video, so bear with me if I seem a little like a novice, because I am. But my video is basically about the subject of Prince Rogers Nelson and how I believe that he had to fake his death. I don't think that he faked his death because he was selfish or of any personal gain, but I believe he had to fake his death. And I wrote a book about it. The book is called Pieces of the Puzzle, and you can find information about that book on my Facebook page that is also titled Pieces of the Puzzle. And that's where I have a link where you might, if you're interested, might be able to purchase it. The link is there on that page. So, but regardless, I'm not just here to promote my book. I'm here to talk about it. Even though it might be kind of a conflict of interest to sell it and to talk about it at the same time, that's what I really have a passion to do. So, last week, or week before last, when I did my first video, I gave you a brief outline as to what I'm going to be talking about in these series of videos that I will be doing. I'm going to talk about today staging, the type of staging that had to take place in order to convince millions of people that Prince died on April 21st, 2016. I'm going to also talk about mind control, because I think that I'm pretty sure it's enough evidence that proves that Prince was subjected to mind control, even though he was a genius, and even though he controlled as much of his life and as much of his finances and gains as he possibly could. I still believe that he was under a great amount of mind control because of other things that I'll be talking about. And I'm going to talk about the Luciferian religion, the religion that seems to be the fastest growing religion here in the United States. Scary as it may be, but it's growing quite rapidly, and it's been the religion of the elite class for quite a long time, and the impact that that religion had on Prince and has on Prince's life. I want to say that even though Prince supposedly passed on April 21st, 2016, it's going to seem like I'm talking about everything from 3 years ago, but I believe he's alive. So that means I'm talking about something that's taking place right now. I'm not talking about past. Everything is not all in the past, even though a lot of the information that I'm going to cover will be familiar to a lot of people. I'm hoping that I can help some people connect the dots because they have a lot of information, but I don't think it leads them to the same conclusion. And I think a lot of people are still grieving for Prince and feeling very, very bad. And I'm hoping that if I go over this correctly, that can help alleviate some of the grief that some people still suffer. I want to start with staging, like I said. Prince had a very good reputation throughout his career as being responsible. If he booked a concert, you could bet he was going to be there. He wasn't absent. He wasn't late. And he was always professional. He gave it his all, no matter what. Okay? You could count on having a fantastic time and having a wonderful experience at all of his concerts. But how do you get people to think that a person has died if he's always on time and he never misses a concert? So a couple of weeks prior to his so-called death, Prince missed a couple of concerts that were supposed to take place in Atlanta, Georgia. Okay, and they say that he missed 2 concerts because he was suffering from the flu. Well, granted, everybody gets sick from time to time and might have to take off from work. That's understandable. But it just seems strange for him not to hardly ever, I don't know if he ever missed any concerts, but to suddenly miss two concerts and have to make them up. So that's not all of the whole thing. That's just one little thing. He missed two concerts just prior to his death, and a so-called death, and he made those concerts up. After he made up those two concerts, on the way back home to Minneapolis, they said that there was an emergency landing that took place in Moline, Illinois. I believe that was staged. I believe the whole thing was staged. They said that Prince was non-responsive. He was sitting up there in the jet, and all of a sudden, he wasn't responding to anybody. And they had to suddenly land the plane in Moline, Illinois, where Prince was given 2 Narcan shots, which sometimes is called safe shots, that's given to people that are about to overdose or die from an opioid addiction. Now, after that, much later, we found out that Prince's assistant had said repeatedly that he didn't know that Prince was suffering from an opioid addiction. He thought that Prince was taking opioids, but he didn't know he was suffering from an addiction and that it had gotten severe. So my question is, how is it that the doctors in Moline, Illinois will give Prince not 1 shot of Narcan, but 2 shots of Narcan to bring him out of, I guess, a drug-induced coma, so to speak, if they didn't know that he was suffering from an opioid addiction? And if Kirk Johnson, his assistant, didn't know that he was suffering from an opioid addiction. So it was previously said that he fell out because of the flu or because of complications due to the flu. But then, like I said, they changed the story, and they said that he needed these Narcan shots to bring him out of an opioid-induced coma. Like I said, it's questionable that how can Kirk say that he didn't know that he had a drug addiction, but then the doctors will give him a Narcan shot that's specifically designed to bring a person out of an opioid-induced coma. Okay, so somebody is lying there. You see, it's hard to tell a lie in one time and then turn around later on, months later, and say that, oh, I didn't know he had a drug addiction, but they're giving him some type of shot specifically for that particular drug addiction. Makes no sense. Okay, now the next day, after they got back to Minneapolis, or back to Chanhassen, there was a resident of Chanhassen that happened to be out near Prince's home, and she saw Prince riding a bicycle early in the morning. So she video recorded him riding a bike. Now, I'm going to tell you that most of the time, when people have gotten high the night before, even if a person has a few too many beers the night before, they usually don't feel like riding a bicycle in the morning. If you get so high off of some type of drugs that you almost die, and somebody has to give you 2 shots of Narcan to bring you out of a coma because of the drugs that you had in your system, it's not very likely that you feel like riding a bike in the morning. Now, I'm saying that because I don't think Prince knew anything about drugs at all for him to feel like riding a bike in the morning. See, I believe it was staged. It was all staged, like I said. And he blew that whole landing in Moline, Illinois nonsense by riding a bike in the morning. That's how little he knows about drugs. Any drug addict could tell you, you don't feel like riding a bike after you almost die the night before. Even if a Narcan shot is supposed to bring you up and wake you up and get your heartbeat faster and make you alert, that still doesn't make you feel like riding a bike, I don't think. I just highly suspect that that's all staged, that whole Moline, Illinois thing. And even if it had people convinced, Prince blew it when he rode the bike the next day. And when the lady video recorded him riding the bike, it gave proof that he was up and about and just fine. Also, later on that evening, Prince had an impromptu concert. So he certainly has a lot of energy to do a lot of things after almost dying in Moline, Illinois. So like I said, that's a couple of things that were staged. Missed concerts, that was staged. Moline, Illinois, landing, emergency landing, coming back, that was staged. Okay? Now let's move a little closer to the date. Now remember, he was supposed to have died April 21st, 2016. Now on April 20th, TMZ happened to find Prince wandering around or pacing back and forth outside of Walgreens drugstores. I guess Prince was so-called fiending for his opioids, okay? Trying to get his prescriptions filled and going in and out of Walgreens stores trying to get his prescriptions filled, right? I say that was staged because Prince, over the 30 plus years of his career, had very seldom gotten photographed just out in broad daylight doing anything. TMZ was never just around to catch Prince doing anything. No, I take that back. About a month prior to this, TMZ caught Prince getting into a limo in broad daylight. And it's here on YouTube, where it's called Rare as a Unicorn. That's the video. Rare as a Unicorn, Prince seen in broad daylight, okay? And it is rare. It was very rare. That's the reason why it's even more rare or odd for TMZ to catch Prince outside of Walgreens the day before he died. It's as though TMZ knew that something was going to happen on April 21st. So they were there on April 20th to start catching him going in and out of Walgreens. Like I said, that's staging. They got to convince you that he was a drug addict, okay, and that he had to go and get his own drugs, okay? So once they got you thinking that he was trying to get his own drugs and he was going to the store to get his drugs, then months later we find out that prescriptions were supposedly written for Prince in Kirk Johnson's name. Remember, Kirk Johnson is Prince's assistant, okay? So opioid prescriptions such as Percocet and Vicodin were written by Dr. Schellenberg for Kirk Johnson to give to Prince. So let's think about this thing. Why would Prince be going to Walgreens for himself now? Now, you know, Prince is a rich man. It doesn't make sense for him to go to the store for himself in the first place. Common sense to tell anybody, no, a person is rich and as famous as Prince, he sends somebody to the store for him. He don't go to the store for himself. Okay? Prince probably wouldn't even go in his own sock drawer and find his own socks for himself. Okay? Let alone go to the store for himself. But they got him going to the store to pick up prescriptions. And the prescriptions weren't even written in his name. The prescriptions were supposedly written in Kirk Johnson's name. So why would Prince go to the store to pick up prescriptions that weren't even in his name? It's staged. The only person that should go to the store to pick up prescriptions would be Kirk Johnson, especially since they were written in his name. Supposedly written in his name. Okay? So the whole Walgreens scene And the fact that TMZ was there to take a photograph of Prince going to Walgreens in his black clothes. You know, they took a picture of him. He was in all black. He had a black hat on, black sweatshirt, black pants, black shoes, and he's walking around. Okay, that's all staged. That's staged because he had no reason to go to Walgreens to get prescriptions that weren't even in his name. Okay. Now I'm gonna tell you about this staging. Also, the doctor that had supposedly written prescriptions for Prince, his name was Dr. Schellenberg. Now, Prince was scheduled to fake his death on April 21st, 2016. It's faked, okay? And in faking his own death, I believe Prince wanted to make sure that no one was going to be interrogated or convicted or tried for negligence or for anything pertaining to his so-called death. Now, there was a doctor, Dr. Schellenberg, that, like I said earlier, was supposed to have written prescriptions for Prince for Percocet and for Vicodin because Prince had pains in his hips and in his body, basically, because of all the performing that he had done over the years and jumping off of speakers and splits and all the athletic type of performances that he did. Okay, so Prince wanted to make sure that when he faked his death, I believe he wanted to make sure that Dr. Schellenberg's practice would not suffer. Okay, so he wanted to make sure that his clients that he had other than himself would continue to see him. And so what happened, Kirk Johnson supposedly decided to try and find an opioid specialist, a specialist that was supposed to help Prince kick the opioid addiction. Okay, so what he did, he contacted an opioid addiction specialist out in California by the name of Dr. Cornfield. Now, you know, there's a lot of people that's been following this thing. They know all these names. They know more about this stuff than I do. But I want to just go on and tell, I have to be very basic with some of this. So Kirk Johnson, his assistant, instead of asking the doctor that supposedly had written all of these prescriptions for Vicodin, for Percocet to Prince, or to, you know, for Prince, he goes and he contacts another doctor by the name of Dr. Cornfield, like I said, out in California. But Dr. Cornfield couldn't come because, you know, Dr. Cornfield, he has a practice himself. And his job can't be on the line. His practice can't suffer either for this nonsense, okay? So what Cornfield does, Cornfield says, well, I can't just up and leave and come all the way out there to Chan Hansen, but I'm going to send my son. So this way, Dr. Schellenberg, his practice is not going to be scrutinized and he's not going to lose his clients. And Dr. Cornfield, he's not going to lose his clients. Because Prince is going to die on the 21st of April, 2016, right? So these two doctors can't suffer. They can't have their practices suffer. So Cornfield sends his son, Andrew, to fly to Chan Hansen, carrying some type of prescriptions that's supposed to help Prince get off the opioids. All right? All of this was designed to make it look like there was an attempt to try and help Prince with his drug addiction. Okay? It would make no sense, like I said, it would make no sense to send for someone all the way across the country, all the way from California, when all they had to do was get a drug addiction specialist right there in Minneapolis. But like we know, nobody is to suffer. If somebody was good, Prince was scheduled to die, and Prince wanted to make sure that these doctors' practices would not come under too much scrutiny. Okay? And the most that happened to either one of these doctors is that they supposedly fined Dr. Schellenberg $30,000 for writing prescriptions to Kirk Johnson for Prince. And that's a no-no. You don't do that. They like I said, supposedly fined him that. I don't think he had to pay a dime to anybody. But, you know, I'm not in anybody's checking account. I can't tell. But that was supposed to be the little slap on the wrist that Schellenberg got. And like I said, Dr. Cornfield out in California sent his son. Now, his son, he flies in, okay? On April 21st, the morning of Prince's so-called death, Cornfield's son shows up at Paisley Park to come in and try and help Prince with his addiction, right? And, I forgot something. The night before, Prince sent everybody home, okay? Prince sent everybody home the night before. So he's alone in his huge Paisley Park mansion by himself, okay? But like I said, the next morning, Cornfield shows up, and the assistants didn't know where Prince was, okay? Now I'm going to show you what staging really looks like. They didn't know where Prince was. They had gotten to work that morning and they couldn't find Prince. So they let Cornfield come in, and Kirk Johnson, and there's another assistant. Her name is Marone Bekur. I'm sorry, I probably mispronounced her name. Bekur, B-E-K-U-R-E, Bekur. These two assistants let Andrew Cornfield come in, and they all run around Paisley Park searching for Prince. And Mr. Cornfield, Andrew Cornfield, heard a scream. And he ran toward the scream, and he saw the assistants, Kirk Johnson and Marone, standing in front of the elevator looking at Prince laying there on the floor of the elevator. And Cornfield was the one that called 911 to have emergency responders come out. Okay? Now I'm going to stop there for a minute because that's the biggest staged nonsense I've ever heard in my entire life. First of all, what type of assistance is going to open up the door for a total stranger and have him come into his master's house, Prince's house, and run around and help them find Prince? If anything, he would have had Cornfield have a seat by the front door somewhere. And the assistants themselves would run around looking for Prince. And if they didn't run around, it would make even more sense for them not to run around looking for Prince, because it would be a natural assumption that Prince wasn't at home. Now remember, nobody knew they were going to find Prince. Nobody knew they were going to find him dead in the elevator at that point. If they go to Prince's living quarters in Paisley Park and they knock on the door, Mr. Nelson, Mr. Nelson, are you woke? And he doesn't come to the door, or if he doesn't say anything, then you just assume he's not home. I mean, let's remember, the day before he was running around looking for drugs, right? The day before he was needing drugs so bad, maybe he slipped out. You wouldn't assume that he was someplace lost in his own house. He's been living there since 1986. He knows his way around. He's not going to get lost. Who looks for somebody in their own house? And what happened to all that privacy? You can't talk to Kirk Johnson. You can't get 10 words out of him without saying, oh, I have to respect Prince's privacy. And he's supposed to be dead. He still talks about Prince's privacy. Oh, Prince's privacy. I can't talk about Prince's privacy. You know, he's such a private man. Oh, but then he's going to open up the door to Prince's house and let a total complete stranger come in and run all up and through there looking for Prince. Excuse my ebonics, I slipped there for a minute. Who's gonna do that? No one is going to do that. Nobody does that. That makes no sense. That's not logical. That's staged. That's a dead giveaway. And let me tell you what's coming of this. They didn't do it for no reason at all. No. Like I said, Cornfield, the visitor, the one from out in California, he had supposedly heard a scream, ran to the elevator, and saw Kirk Johnson and Marone standing there looking at Prince laying there on the floor. Supposedly, Cornfield touches Prince's body and he's still warm to the touch. So Cornfield, he's the only one that has the presence of mind to call 911 and have 911 come out, or emergency responders come out to the house. Not his two assistants. They're just too distraught, by the way, okay? So since Cornfield, the total stranger, was the one that called 911, he can't be scrutinized. He can't be held accountable for negligence. He can't be held accountable for even bringing drugs across the country illegally, because he wasn't supposed to be bringing any drugs, because he's not a doctor and Prince didn't have a prescription. So he's flying across the country with illegal drugs, prescribed drugs, prescription drugs for Prince. None of this is going to be a problem because he was the one that called 911. And Minnesota has a loophole in the law called the Good Samaritan law, whereas the person that calls for first responders to call, they're not going to be charged with anything, or they're let off the hook in some strange, odd way. That's staged. Because that loophole was brought up prematurely. Who starts screaming out loopholes in the law before you get to court? I could see if Cornfield had to go before a judge and his lawyer told the judge, well, Your Honor, my client here should be allowed to leave without any charges here because he's the Good Samaritan law, statute number blah, blah, blah. Good Samaritan law says that he shouldn't be charged with anything because he called 911. But for some reason, the Good Samaritan law just comes up too soon. It's thrusted out there in the public eye too soon. We'll talk about that later. I don't know if I made my point on that, but that was some nonsense, okay? No staff member saw Prince's body removed from Paisley Park, okay? Prince's body was cremated the next day or 2 days later, based on a one-page autopsy report. His body was cremated before they even had the death certificate. They never had a death certificate. They had a death report. No death certificate and no autopsy report. Or at least, let me back up. A one-page autopsy report. The completed autopsy report wasn't completed until about 2 or 3 weeks later. But they're going to cremate the body before all the evidence and information is even in. It's staged. Staged. They said Tyka, the sister that nobody even knew he had, came along and had him cremated, way too soon. Didn't nobody know anything about somebody named Tyka? Okay, let me back up. Tyka made a cameo appearance back in 1988, and I think she's staged too, but we're going to talk about Tyka, okay? We're going to talk about her, but not now. She's not a bad person, believe me. Not at all. Not at all. I'll talk about her later. But she supposedly had him cremated. Now they had a, I'm gonna let you go. I didn't realize this video was lasting this long. It's been going on 30 minutes, but let me go on. There was a press conference by sheriff by the of Carver County, and the sheriff, he said something that I thought was very strange. He said that everything was done according to protocol. That when 911 was called, everything was done according to protocol. He must have said things were done according to protocol 5 times. And anytime anybody has to convince the viewing audience that things are done according to protocol that many times, it's because something is wrong. Something was not done according to protocol. It was probably all a lie. It's probably all staged. I want you to check it out. It's right here on YouTube. Sheriff of Carver County investigation. You know, you type it in, whatever search engine you want to use, you'll find it. He's going to talk. He's going to say things were done according to protocol. Things were done nonsense. One other thing, this sheriff slipped up and he said, and I don't think he realized he slipped up. He said that after the autopsy report is complete, the investigation will be called off. Check out the video. Okay, I can't show you right now, but check out the video. He's going to say the investigation into this death, Prince's death, will be called off after the investigation. After the autopsy is completed. How does he know? How does he know that the autopsy will not lead one to suspect that there was murder? Okay? How would he know that? How would he know that it's going to be called off after the autopsy report is complete? He knew it was going to be called off because he knew that they weren't going to find anything. He played his hand too soon. He should have never said that the autopsy report, that the investigation was going to be called off. He never should have said that. By saying that, he knew that they weren't going to find anything. Okay? And they're not going to find anything because he ain't dead. Another thing, the coroner, she gets up there and she starts saying everything that he was an accidental overdose. Accidental overdose. Everything's accidental. How does anybody know that it was an accidental overdose? And to make sure that Dr. Schellenberg is not charged, suddenly he takes fentanyl. He accidentally took fentanyl. Enough fentanyl to kill 80 people his size. You can't take that much fentanyl accidentally. You might accidentally swallow something that you're not supposed to swallow, but you don't accidentally swallow 80 pills. You might accidentally swallow a gnat that might have fell in your drink, but you don't accidentally swallow a whole chicken. You don't accidentally swallow that much stuff, okay? So how can he accidentally take that much fentanyl? It's staged, okay? Okay, and they staged it in such a way that nobody was to get in trouble, all right? So I think I held you long enough, a lot longer than I planned to. I hope you press like. I hope you give me a thumbs up. I hope you're not mad at me because I know some of you have already come to the conclusion that you think he's dead and you've already wrapped your mind around it already. I hope I'm not hurting you. I hope this makes you happy, okay? And I hope Prince is happy. I hope Prince is safe, okay? And if he's watching me, hey. But what I want you to do, I want you to have a blessed day. I want you to have love for one another. Peace. Subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Love you. Peace.